Oh shoot, the live stream didn't start. It's been on Facebook. Sorry, everybody. Let me try to reset this. I think I turned away from the screen too fast. I wonder how much. Let's see. Well, I think we missed a little bit of the live stream. Sorry, everybody. I guess it didn't start. So if on Facebook, the beginning is here, and maybe I can stitch in the rest of on YouTube if it wasn't playing. I'm not sure what happened. But anyway, we are here with Rattlecast number 102. We just talked to Angie Minkin, and that was today's poet with her poem 50 Words. And let's look at the other poem that we're going to publish on Tuesday as a preview. This is from Marjorie Lotfi, who was on a recent Rattlecast, maybe Rattlecast number 70 something. And she's a let me read the bio note first before we do this poem. Marjorie says, this week scientists have discovered a crabapple tree found on an uninhabited island off of Shetland, north of Scotland. Is a pure species, never cross-pollinated with one which may have been there since the last ice age. It's also a mystery. The possibility of seed reaching the outer Hebrides by animal or human is unlikely, the scientists said, as neither birds nor humans consume crabapples. As a person who comes from generations that moved country due to war, hunger, and economic need, I've always been envious of those who claimed a place as their own and stayed. Although I know firsthand that leaving home is difficult, I'm certain that choosing to stay can be even more difficult. That was Marjorie Lotfi's note, and this is her poem, Home, for this crabapple tree that is a lonely crabapple tree clinging to a cliffside on this mountain in the Shetlands on a little island, and all alone. And here we go. Let's hear Marjorie's take on this news story.
Home. This I understand. The instinct to cling at any cost to the place you are rooted. To see another season through, though the others seed elsewhere. Your own young move with tides and summer squalls. Even in this sedentary act, you push the limit. Winter becomes summer, becomes winter, and you are steadfast on your crag, your outcrop. You bear fruit for yourself. There is purity in solitude. No one hears your language, the shape of your limbs against a darkening sky. You question the need to grow against the wind. Despite what they say, there's no mystery in simply holding on. But what is home, if not the choice over and over again to stay?
And that was Marjorie Lotfi with Tuesday's poem, a preview of that, Home, about the crabapple tree. And I just love that last couplet. What is home if not the choice over and over again to stay? What a great pair of lines there. That's what made the poem sing to me. And that was Marjorie Lotfi with Home once again. And now we're going to take a quick break and jump over to today's featured guest, Ace Boggess. And let us do that right now. So I'm going to put up the splash screen. Just let me tell you, for everybody on YouTube who didn't get the stream in time because it didn't turn on when I clicked the button, I will post Angie's segment as a separate video. I think that's what I'll do. I'll do that. I'll post that as a separate video on YouTube later so that the stream stays the same and the chat window stays the same. But then you can also watch the little segment with Angie that you missed. It's also on Facebook and Twitter, though. That was streaming fine in those two platforms. Anyway, let us take a quick break, and we'll go to today's featured reader, Ace Boggess. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience as we connected with Ace Boggess. Today's guest is a poet that we've published many, many times in Rattle. I didn't even look up the number, but it might be 8 or 9 or so times. I'm not even sure. Ace Boggess is the author of 6 books of poetry, including The Prisoners, Ultra Deep Field, and I Have Lost the Art of Dreaming It So, as well as the novel States of Mercy and A Song Without a Melody. He earned his BA from Marshall University and his JD from West Virginia University. He serves as senior editor at the Adirondack Review and associate editor at the Evening Street Review. His poems have appeared all over the place, and his awards include the Robert Bausch Fiction Award and a fellowship from the West Virginia Commission of the Arts. He was locked up for 5 years in the West Virginia prison system, an experience which has been the basis for much of his writing. He currently resides in Charleston, West Virginia, and here he is, Ace Boggess. Hey, Ace, how you doing today?
Hello, Tim. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's just great to meet you after all these years. I was one of those poets that I feel like I know, even though I don't know. Like, we've never met, but I've read so many of your poems over the years. So it's great to put a face to the name.
We've been trading emails for about 20 years now, I think.
Yeah, we really have. We really have. Do you want to start out with a poem?
Sure. This is my new book, Escape Envy. And I'm going to start with the opening piece. I was heading for Georgia, but saw the sunrise. In Virginia, the last 10 miles or so, as the interstate dripped down the side of a high top at 5% grade. Nothing but view to my left. Across the valley, I spotted that mountain shaped like a turtle, shell side and budding neck, poking its lonely head above a silk line of mist. Red and orange set along the fog's plain, like stemless blooms of roses bobbing in a pond, like candles on a silver cake. For those few minutes I had no destination, no hotel room waiting in Columbus, no acquaintances to make. It was as though I stole a pause from life, then froze it without aid of camera's lens, before my car descended past the tree line and on into North Carolina, where it might as well be raining, and it was.
And that was the opening poem. I was heading for Georgia, but saw the sunrise, from Escape Envy, Ace Boggess' newest book, which you can see on the screen right there. Ace, let's start out. Just let us know, like, what your background is in writing. How did you become a poet? I know that you started out writing novels, and then sort of drifted toward poetry, maybe, if it could be described that way. How did that work?
That's the tricky part. I've always considered myself a novelist, at least up until prison. But along the way, while I was writing these novels that weren't selling, I was finding agents, but not publishers, and just having all kinds of horrible luck with those. And along the way, I was writing poems just on the side, and they were getting published. They were getting published everywhere. That's been about 30 years now, I think. I've started publishing in 91, and the poetry has just taken off, and I've gotten a little better at it. And I write about everything. I mean, I write poems instead of taking pictures. So whenever something happens, I just write about it. And the success has kind of pushed me further.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to like, what was it that drew you to writing novels in the first place? Like, when did you start writing those? Is something you wanted to be as a kid all the time, or, I mean, you were a lawyer too. So how did that, was it?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I would write a chapter to a novel when I was 11 or 12, and it'd just be nonsense, but I would write it and then put it aside and never look at it again. And then when I got to college, I wanted to be a horror writer, so I wrote my first horror novel around 89 or 90, and then I moved into more literary things after that. I wrote 15 novels in 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Couldn't sell one of
them. Did you, I don't know, what was it like having 15 novels? Did you find, like, agents and pitch them around? And, I mean, how?
Yeah, I had an agent.
It's interesting because, poetry is such a struggle. And, like, to find publishers and publish books, but novels maybe even more so. Was that your experience?
Well, I found an agent for 3 of the books out of 15. Uh, I admit a lot of them were complete crap, but some of them, the ones that are published now, were ones that I wrote then, and the agent couldn't sell them, and it was really distressing to me because I had a poetry book come out in 2003, about 3 years before my arrest, and I didn't see the value in it because I had all these novels floating around that weren't doing well. And meanwhile, I've got this whole other side career going that I don't even pay attention to. It really kind of took me getting locked up to realize what I was actually doing well.
Do you want to read another poem?
Sure. Let's see. This is Escape Envy is sort of a travel book. It's about freedom and the things that I've experienced since I've been out of prison. And this is called Day Trip to the Huntington Museum of Art. Grace walks by the Renoir without slowing. I follow, saying, Renoir, as if I'm a boy and navigating the toy aisle at the supermarket, begging his mother and father, I want the Renoir. Can I have the Renoir, please, please, please? She tells me. It's not one of his best. But I, not having seen one up close before, double back, stand, stare, dazzled and a bit confused by the red, orange umber. It's a blur, alien, so much I find it hard to spot the young woman in a landscape. I enjoy the painting, though. Even the tiny hole that attests to its age and a handler's careless movement years ago. It's obvious to me Grace and I won't agree about the Renoir, although we share a moment, mesmerized by some minor artist's misty portrait of the moon, then a gallery filled with newer panoramic visions of Antarctic ice flows, a few valleys, depicted from a height so intense, precise, I feel a flash of vertigo, as though I'm standing tiptoed on the edge of a cliff. This, our holy pause to be amazed together, as if sharing a sunset or good news. What won't happen with the Renoir? Divisive, disputable, which, whether you like it or not, as together we do, proves it to be the work of a daring master.
And that was Day Trip to the Huntington Museum of Art from Escape Envy. Reading your work, Ace, I've always felt like absurdity was sort of the central thing. Like it's sort of like observing and appreciating the absurdity of life is like your central conceit maybe for poems. And that's what they seem to come out of. Like things that seem like they really happened and then how absurd they are, a kind of a Camus type vibe. Is that something that you think about in terms of poetry? What are you going for when you write a poem?
It is. You've completely captured the sum of my best work, which is things are just silly. I go to prison and I find humor there. I go to a museum, which is serious and stuffy, and I find humor there. Even a funeral, I try to find humor. It's a coping mechanism that I have for some anxieties that I've had my whole life. And it does relate in big ways to Camus and existentialism in general, which were big themes early on in my writing, especially the novels. But yeah, I try to find humor. I want to say it this way. I have trouble talking to people that I don't know. So I will always crack a joke. And if you laugh, then I know we can talk. We can be friends. And it's the same way with my writing. It's sort of a mix of journalism and humor. I'm trying to tell a real story of what's going on, but at the same time, give you a little bit of a laugh so that you're not so freaked out by some of it.
Yeah. It feels like you treated your experience in prison the same way. You spent 5 years in prison, which is it's a long stretch of time of your life, and that could be devastating to some people. But you seem to sort of make the most of it in some way. I mean, I remember, I think there's some poems I've read of yours where you talked about helping prisoners with their legal things and writing poems for them and things like that. What was your experience like there, and how has it shaped you as a person now that you're out?
Well, I've rebuilt my career off of it. I'll take that as a plus. But I mean, it was horrible, especially the first year or so. But after a while, doing time in prison just becomes your life, just like college. Uh, you know, whatever you might be into, your job, your family, it's just life. And just like in life, you have your serious moments and your funny moments and your moments that are just completely unexplainably crazy. And the journalist in me always wanted to capture that. But the existentialist in me just wanted to laugh, just always laugh. Because prison is the ultimate example of existentialism, which is probably why Camus used it. I mean, you have absolutely no control over your life, and yet you still find ways to escape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about what was hard about it? Because, most people don't have that experience, and so don't know how to relate to that. Was it the psychological, like, not having freedom that was the biggest factor, or was it like the physicality of being there in prison with other people? What was it that was difficult about it, or the most difficult? I'm sure a bunch of different things were.
Well, not having freedom is big. You're always at risk of getting in additional trouble while you're in there, because the nature of the situation is that everyone is trying to get away with as much as they can, and there are all these rules that you have to follow. I was the legal rep for probably 3.5 of the 5 years that I was there, so I would have to sit in front of the institutional magistrate and make these arguments, ridiculous arguments for people's cases, for everything from having a cigarette to trying to escape, or getting online at the time was a major write-up. And we just had to deal with those things. But there was always the risk of violence. There was violence regularly. I mean, you have to deal with really people coming at you from both sides. You have the inmates and the staff, and either one of them can come at you at any time, and you just have to be ready for it. But at the same time, that was part of what made it fascinating, was if you could sit back and watch that when you weren't involved in it. When you're involved in it, it's not very fun. But when you can sit back and watch it, or when you can have other people tell you their story before you go in to talk to the magistrate, that was fascinating. And anything that I haven't experienced, I have this childlike fascination for. I think I carry that a lot into escape envy as well, as just getting back out and traveling around and seeing things that visiting places like the old closed down West Virginia prison, West Virginia Penitentiary, where Charles Manson's mother stayed.
Oh, wow.
And it's fascinating stuff. And whenever I experience something new, because of those anxieties that I had as a kid and really still do, anytime I experience something new, I'm just captivated by it.
Did you experience violence personally, like directly at you? I've talked to some people.
I was in a few fights.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was fighting. I would say I was in a few fights.
Yeah. I talked to a few people who, a poet we published in particular, who I won't name, I don't think I should, but he said that he, was in jail for so long that he couldn't relate to the outside world anymore. Like he had like anxiety leaving, because there was no like structure and no like guarantee of like hots in a cot or whatever. And so he actually would commit crimes just to go back because he didn't want to live in the real world. And he, he wrote poems and he thought that was a better life than he could have outside. Did you have that feeling at all with that? Were you able to avoid the bad enough that there was good, or is that just, a few people have said similar things like that if you keep your head down, you can sort of avoid things and it's not as bad?
I've had those anxieties my whole life.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the same for me coming out. For me, getting out was just another thing to experience. I mean, I experience things and then move on to the next thing. And, I'm glad that part of my life is gone. But what I've experienced since, that's a new story and a new life, and try to have as much fun as I can while I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's always that sort of realization that maybe you were better off in there. Maybe you didn't have to worry as much. But then you realize, yeah, you had to worry. Yeah. You always had to worry. It's just, what kind of worry are you comfortable with? Yeah,
that's interesting. Do you want to read the next poem? I think you want to do Escape Envy next, which is a good.
Yeah, the title piece, which was a Rattle Poets Respond piece. I think probably the first year you were doing those. Escape envy. Dreams that belong to each of us. Unbroken spirit versus unbreakable walls. I remember mine as vividly as leg irons. Sniffing pollen from flowers at a highway's edge. Hiding from marshals under a mound of brittle leaves in the garden. Eating burgers in a dead cafe. So when I heard those two guys made it out from Clinton Correctional in New York, through a hole in the wall, along pipes and hidden passageways, out a manhole into the movie-like rain, a part of me rejoiced. Not the part that knows human decency. Not the part that wants to be safe in its discreet new life. No. That other part that wishes itself bravado, the visionary, weighted down from years of longing. How it must feel for them to anticipate a soft mattress, softer arms embracing. First sniff at sizzle scents of steak, and how confusing to learn the world has changed without them, whatever world they dreamt of escaping to. It's there I leave them. As though putting down a paperback thriller, not wanting to read what happens next when truth does violence to their fantasies, as it will. And the gray fermented fruits of what was believed to be freedom squeeze sad wine into a glass from which these men already drank before.
And that was Escape Envy, the title poem from Ace Boggess' new book. If you have any questions for Ace, please do pass them along in the chat windows. We're back on YouTube, even though it was off at first, and we're always rolling on Facebook. So feel free to share any questions, and I'll pass them along. But Ace, let's talk about the poetry in a little more depth. You're a very prolific poet, it seems to me. It seems like you write, I imagine that you write daily, and there's some kind of ritual or routine to that, because you write a lot of poems, and really consistently well too. It seems to me. I mean, I only see the ones you send out, but what is your writing process like, and how do you approach writing a poem when you sit down to do it?
First things are a cigarette and a cup of coffee, and then I read. I usually, whatever book I'm reading now, or I'll pick up a journal or a copy of Best American, something, and I'll read for about 20 minutes while I drink my coffee. And I work myself into a sort of almost a trance. And I just, once the idea comes, I just go with it and follow it wherever it leads me. I do the hard work on it later when I'm typing it, because I write longhand, lying in bed these days usually. But I can't say that I know what the process is from there. That's sort of left over from my drug addiction days, because I used to take the pills and I would read for 20 or 30 minutes until they kicked in,
Oh,
and
really?
then I would start to write. Uh, and even though I don't take the pills anymore, I still do that. I have that same weird approach where I have to read a little bit, and then I just sort of blend in with my surroundings and let my brain do whatever it does. Uh,
That's
I've
really
always got
interesting.
I've
Yeah.
always got so many things going on in my head at the same time. I just try to grab one and hold on.
That's interesting that it was. So you wrote on drugs, first of all. That's how you did it at first?
Not at first,
Uh-huh.
but
But over
uh,
time?
yeah, I picked up the drug habit in '98 when I
Mhm.
finished law school, and it was about 8 years of drug use from there.
What kind of drugs were they? Were they like what did it do for you? And it's interesting that you sort of had the same process and don't need them. What kind of drugs were they, and what did they give you? And then how did you find it without them? That's interesting.
Oh, I was on Oxycontins, Roxasets, Percocets, Lortabs, uh, morphine, methadone, just about anything I could get my hands on. Uh, and the main thing they did was they got rid of all those anxieties that I talked about.
Mm.
Uh, I felt like I could interact with other people. Uh, I mean, they allowed me really to sit still for more than a little bit. You know, about an hour is as long as I can usually handle sitting in one place before I have to get up and just move around. Uh, but I would take those and I could go down to my favorite haunt and sit there for 8 hours and write and talk to anybody that happened to come in and want to sit down and have a conversation or play a game of chess or sing a song, whatever. They they soothed something in me that I didn't realize was broken.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, they became a big part of my life, and then when everything started to fall apart, they contributed to that too.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. So how did you sort of manage to fix what was broken? Because I mean, you're really productive right now. How did you like come through that window or find a new way through?
I really didn't.
Hmm.
I've still got the same issues that I had before. It's just now I understand them better, and I call them out. I tell people up front. I said, I have this problem and this problem and this problem, and I've done this and done that, and I've had this happen to me, and just the act of getting it out uh, helps. I mean, it solves the problem, but I still, I still avoid my crowds and situations that don't feel comfortable to me. Uh, the only place that I ever actually do feel comfortable is when I'm on stage reading a poem,
Hmm.
and I'm completely at home there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, just your openness about this is really, I mean, it's amazing to watch. And also, I mean, your poems seem like that way too. They seem very open, and you're honestly pursuing like what your actual mental state is at the time. Do you have anything in mind when you're writing? Like when you said you read for like 20 minutes or half an hour or whatever, and then in bed and then write longhand. Do you know what you're going to write about, or does the reading inspire what you were going to write about? How do you find out what you're going to write about?
Different ways. Sometimes I'll have an idea already floating around from usually from walking around outside, smoking a cigarette, thinking about things, and I'll have that in my head. Sometimes the reading will inspire it, like a particular memory will come up. Somebody's writing about their childhood, and something from my childhood will come up that I hadn't thought about before. But I also have a series of prompts, these questions that I keep a list of questions, and I have for 20 years now. And whenever I'm struggling, I'll go through the questions and I'll find a question that appeals to me and just answer it. Answer it with whatever's going on in my life, or if it's a question that I've just picked up, possibly answer it directly to the asker. Uh, yeah. I think I'm probably most known for those question poems. So
Yeah, I think so too. And it's interesting that you said that you're addressing them to the asker, which is it sort of maybe adds to the intimacy that you feel. Like it feels like you're talking. When you're talking to somebody in particular, the poems just feel like you're more connected to the subject matter. Like as a reader, you're sort of like everybody at once when you're reading a poem that's actually spoken to somebody in a way that invites them in too. And I think I saw that you asked people just on your Facebook, right, for questions. I think I've seen you do that at least once, where you were like, "Hey,
several
everybody,
times.
ask me a question because I'm building my list." Um,
I've taken them from the strangest places. Of course, I take them from other poems and from short stories and novels, but I've taken them from billboards, taglines on CNN. I've overheard them in coffee shops and movie theaters. I took one off the back of a cereal box once at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's just anytime I see a question that is interesting. But often when I'm in a conversation, people will ask me things that they don't realize they're asking, and they'll go off in really weird directions, and I'll think I can do something with that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, what is it about questions? Like, why do you think questions generate so much content? Because a lot of people I've heard, write down snippets of phrases, but to focus on questions is something a little bit unusual.
It feels good to answer them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many I've written over the years. Probably 600 or 700, and half of those have been scrapped or butchered into something that I don't even remember now. But when something, it's that fascination aspect again. When something fascinates me, I want to do something with it. And questions, they just do that for me. I like answering questions as long as they're not yes or no questions. I can't do anything with yes or no questions.
Well, I think the next poem you wanted to read was "Can They Do That" from Rattle and from Prisoners.
This is from The Prisoners. This is the book I actually wrote in prison. Most of the poems were published while I was in prison, and I got the acceptance for the book on the day I made it out.
Oh, wow.
So I was the legal rep, of course, and people would come up to me with all kinds of questions. But this is a question that I was asked several times. This inmate, Johnny Redmond was his name, happened to get the credit for the question, but can they do that? They can feed you pulverized bones of a rat, but not the eyes or hair. They can softly submerge your face in the sink, never the toilet without a showing of cause. They can sing country western songs all night, off key as you try to sleep. Rap on Fridays, rhythm and blues in the afternoon, though heavy metal would violate your rights. They can laugh at your inadequacy. They can kick you, but only when you're down. They'll seduce your wife with white roses and tales of your exploits floundering like a bear with no arms and broken wings. On a good day, they might leave you alone. A good day for you, for they have none. They can spin you in a centrifuge, dress you in dresses, dance on your grave, can tie your shoelaces in a knot. Don't say they cannot. Then lock your fingers in a Chinese puzzle, so you struggle until you disappear. A Theseus walking threadless into a maze.
That was "Can They Do That" from Rattle number 34, but also from Ace's book, The Prisoners. I'm glad you picked that poem to read, because I feel like that is a quintessential Ace Boggess poem. Because you see the absurdity and then the playing and having fun with the absurdities of life. And they're serious. It's a serious question from Johnny, but you play with it and turn it into just entertainment. And then the deeper heart of the poem is underneath that entertaining aspect. So it's just fun to watch you do what you do. There was a question over here. So Patricia Rockwood asks, your poems sound very fresh and almost like they are written without much revision. Do they come out mostly complete?
It's a mix. I will say that my best poems usually don't have much revision. In fact, I don't like the word revision. I tend to use the word edit, uh, because to revise is to change, and I don't really like to change what I've done. But to edit is to fix, and I do like to fix what's wrong with things. So some things don't get edited very much. Some of my best poems was one in Rattle called "Watching the Wizard of Oz in Prison." It came out almost word for word the way it was printed. I never wanted to change a thing. But then there are others that I will take a chainsaw to. It's just because I'm writing so stream of conscious. When I get to the typing and editing stage, I never know how much work I'm going to have to put into it. And of course, I never send the same poem out twice. So if you're the second magazine to get a poem, it's been edited again. Something is different. I keep tightening the screws until it either gets accepted or it breaks. And when it breaks, I just throw it away.
That's interesting. And do you find that after poems are published, there's still editing to go, or do you feel like, hey, this worked and for somebody, so it's I'm free now and I don't have to edit anymore?
It's never done until it's in a book, and then I have no desire to touch it again. Then I just get to share them.
And over on YouTube, Daniel Mass was asking about your editing process, but also asked if you're in a writing group. Like, how much writing interaction do you have with other writers? Do you show your poems to other writers and participate like that, or are you sort of more independent?
I don't these days. Before I got locked up, I was in a writing group in Huntington, West Virginia, called the Guy and Dot Poets. Some relatively well-known poets in there, John McKernan and Ron Houchin, who I think you published, A.E. Stringer, some really good poets. And, I did learn a lot from that. At the same time, that's another thing that had to be moved beyond, because you get to know what people are going to say. And oftentimes you'll get exactly opposite advice from two different people. And the truth is, over time, you learn what works and what doesn't, and you have to go with that.
Yeah, that's the thing that I always, I love writers groups, and it's really useful. But you also have to learn, that it's sort of a poem isn't a bureaucratic like memo or something. Like you can't please everybody. You have to stick to your guns a lot more than I think people do. There's a temptation to try to, especially in the creative writing and college workshops, that Iowa program where you're sitting around at a table. You kind of have to be your idiosyncratic self,
Yeah, and absorb as much as you can from everything, and read as much as you can. I have a thing every 2 or 3 years. I will go back and read every volume of Best American Poetry, and you learn more from doing that than you can from listening to anybody. It's 40 years or 30 years. I'm not even sure how long it's been around now, of just good poetry. I wouldn't say the greatest poetry all the time, but good poetry consistently all the way through. And go back and type some of those poems. You learn more that way. Learn what does work, and reading them all together, you get to see the trends too. What was working 10 years ago that's not working now. It's very helpful. And the same with reading journals. You just I'll go back and read back issues of like the Colorado Review or Rattle, and you gain so much from the past issues that you don't get when you're reading them for pleasure. Like you buy one off the shelf, you sit down and read it, and like, yeah, well, that's good. And then you go back and read it a second time. That's when you analyze stuff, and it teaches you.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you want to read the next poem? I think the next one was the other one from The Prisoner, The Perfect Murder.
Oh, yes. Well, once again, going back to The Prisoners, I like to read this one because this one really shows the absurdity you were talking about. This is a horrible conversation, and it's probably 90% true. The perfect murder. Gas explosion, says the shorter of the two inmates. Sad smile, greasy Elvis hair, and you can tell he's considered it, measured the hiss and stink, the spark. The why and for whom he doesn't let slip. Hole in the line, he says. Then, boom! It burns away all trace. Nothing the other suggests seems as interesting. Car wreck, sleeping pills, several other versions of fire like smaller caliber bullets, without the bright and bloody big bang of their betters. Even this back and forth is tense as a Hitchcock film. So I interject. No, the best weapon still a deadly scorpion. You can't get fingerprints off a deadly scorpion. A setup, waiting for the question. Finally, the taller one gives in. Why can't you get fingerprints off a scorpion? He says. I say, because it doesn't have any fingers. As the hard, embarrassed silence of one and Tommy gun laughs of the other reshuffle their dreadful tarot deck of a dialogue. It's like that scene in Psycho when you first realize it's Norman Bates wearing his mother's clothes and you don't know whether to giggle, gasp, or softly readjust your ashen wig as you sink down lower, ever lower in your seat.
Another fun one. That was The Perfect Murder from The Prisoners. One of the things that's interesting is a couple of people already mentioned, let me see if I can find them again, but people on the chat windows have mentioned your use of line break. And can't find exactly what they said, but you do. It's Richard Westheimer. He says, I love how when Ace reads, he believes in his line breaks. And you have that whole series of poems that don't have any punctuation. So use line break as like the only punctuation. Can you explain a little bit about what, I think you were writing for that for several years. You were writing just poems. I think they were always in couplets too, maybe, or usually, but with no punctuation except for maybe question marks.
Right. That was the what became Ultra Deep Field, my third book, second after The Prisoners. I started that my last year inside, and I had spent 4 years writing all the books that fit in The Prisoners, and I just thought, well, I've got a year left, hopefully. I didn't know I was going to get out, but I thought it's time to push myself, to try something else, and I wanted to see what I could do without any punctuation. I mean, even with clauses and sentences and new sentences, and see where things could fit. So I just started doing that, and for the last year I was in prison, and probably the first year I was out, I did nothing but that, just forcing those weird little unpunctuated couplets. And I got some really good poems out of it. Watching the Wizard of Oz in Prison was one. But I also got a lot of horrible crap too. You don't know that until you start to read them. And sometimes where there's no punctuation, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So like I said, you tighten until they break. And if they break, say goodbye.
So what did you learn throughout that process? Because you don't do it now, but it seems like a sort of a journey into the wilderness to learn something new. So what did you learn while doing that? And what have you come back with? Like how do you think of the purpose of line breaks? Because your poems are they're not metrical and they're not rhymed. So it's just the tension of enjambment really that's functioning, and the length of the line too. So how do you think about the structure? You also have a whole series of prose poems too, which is like the opposite. Like you had the poems that were where the line breaks were so important because they were the punctuation. Then you have prose poems now.
See, that's a new test for me. I don't know much about the prose poem. I don't really understand it, and I've been experimenting with that for about a year now, just off and on, not full force like with the couplets. But for me, line breaks are breaths. I mean, that's where I, as the reader, take a breath. it's my way of, I guess, annotating it for when I'm on stage. So I know, okay, I got this break here, take a breath. I've got this stanza break here, take a long breath. And I use that also to trick the reader by going one way, and then stopping, and then going the other way. It's just, but mainly it's about the performance.
So how do you find reading the prose poems to be different? Because there are no line breaks. Do you?
I haven't actually read one other than for Rattle, for the new issue, and that it was kind of like reading a story. I was looking for places to take a breath, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Let's we have maybe 20 minutes. I think there's like 4 poems left on the list. Let's read another poem.
Okay, I'm going back to Escape Envy. Actually, let's switch gears. Why don't we do the Rattle piece?
Yeah, sure. Let me.
I'm gonna have to find that one though.
Yeah, I will too. But luckily, we're in alphabetical order, which always makes it much easier.
Okay. I had forgotten to include that on the list. All right. Goodbye for now. A guy from DNR tracked the neighborhood bear, a yearling who's been causing quite a stir on Facebook and in rubbish bins along Gordon Drive. Scraps, all it wanted, wandering in excessive summer heat. Families can't live with a bear on the street, making a mess, marking its territory by scatterings of meat-scented plastic and a few violent markings on the trees. At first, the DNR rep swore the bear would be put down, its black-brown coat blooming lips and roses, but everyone has a camera. Photos posted in the Facebook group once reserved for neighborly complaints about fireworks or people speeding were like those of someone's happy child at play in a brutal world. So, the bear will be relocated to a wildlife preserve. Plenty of space, lots of caves and streams. There's enough emptiness in West Virginia for any reclusive animal, a myth, a memory, escaping the limelight in which it never wanted to be, like a murderer's wife.
So how was that to read? That was Goodbye for Now.
It's actually kind of uncomfortable. I want to stop every place the line stops on the page, which is not the way it's meant to read.
So what made you want to do that? And you have a whole series of prose poems now that you're working on, I assume?
Not really a series. I just experiment with it from time to time, trying to get a grasp of it. Just every now and then, when I think I'm getting a little stale, I'll try something new just to do it. Just like with experiencing things, it's important to me that I don't just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Although I do always go back to the questions eventually.
Yeah, I mean, the questions is just a well, like a bottomless well that you can always recharge, it seems like, because those poems are great. This issue is Appalachian Poets, of course, and that is one of the few poems. I didn't realize you were an Appalachian poet, I think, until you sent, I didn't think of you that way. I guess I knew you were in West Virginia, but it didn't occur to me because you don't write about sort of those type themes. What does it mean to be an Appalachian poet to you? It's my favorite tribute. I think I love the poems because there's the heart is like storytelling, and that seems to be sort of pervasive across the board. But what does it mean to you to be an Appalachian?
Honestly, I feel like kind of an outsider at times, and again, that's probably my anxieties, but I'm just now starting to explore the nature scenes, the parts of the state and the region that my anxieties had kept me away from for years. I mean, for most of my life, I've done everything I can to avoid experiencing these things, and Like I never thought I would be a poet writing about bears or deer and rabbits and stuff like that. That's never been my thing. It's always been people and absurdity. Uh, and now I find myself standing outside smoking a cigarette. Don't mean to offend your California ears. Smoking a cigarette, and a herd of deer will wander through the yard 10 feet away. Uh, I see foxes and raccoons and possums and connecting with that. None of them are ever frightened. I'll just stand there and smoke, and they'll just wander by, maybe give me a look. It's a new part of life. It's something I'm just beginning to feel, really.
That's interesting. Yeah. Do you want to read another poem? I think.
Sure.
I want to make sure we get through a good number.
Okay. My condolences. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for your loss. I must practice lest I get words wrong. This simple thing I don't know how to say. I've never been a mourner, never worn those black glasses grief prescribes. I confess that I can't empathize with what way you react when people die. Now someone close, your heart, your wife. How might I sneak you past the weepers in this sadness study group? I who've not yet read the introduction to their text. I'm sorry for your loss. I'll tell you, mechanical as a grinding clock. But why should you listen? What good will it do? I'd be like a pallbearer showing up with broken arms. More dead weight on the uneven path. Drunken lout who came too late, singing his song of sorry for your loss.
That was My Condolences from Escape Envy. Danny Mask asks what you do for work now. And you were a lawyer. I don't know if you're still working in the legal profession, or do you do something else? And I wonder how much. Yeah.
Actually, wasn't a lawyer.
You
just had a law degree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I do some freelance editing. I do some freelance editing, but mostly I am unemployed.
So what was you got your law degree? Does that have anything to do with wanting to be a writer? Like I always think that that lawyer poets issue is really interesting because there's such a the law is words and language being precise, which is sort of the opposite of what language is doing in poetry. So it's always an interesting comparison. But what was it that made you get a JD?
Panic. I was a reporter for 4 years back in the early 90s, and some things happened where I was no longer in that profession. I had a couple of failed newspaper jobs after that, and because of my anxieties, what you were describing about people coming out of prison, that's where I was back then, about not having a job. And I thought, well, the only thing that I can do is go back to school. Why not try this? And so I did. But it was actually while I was in law school that I finished A Song Without a Melody, that convinced me I could succeed as a writer, because I finished this book and I got an agent for it after, I'd written, I think, 4 before that and had not had any success whatsoever. And with this one, I had an agent. I thought, okay, I'm on my way. I believed in it. I didn't believe in the law. So, plus I picked up a drug habit while I was there, which didn't help. Went back home to Huntington at the time and just kept working on the books until everything exploded on me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we have time. We're sort of running short. Let's do another poem and then another couple questions and then another poem to end out the show.
All right. This is another rattle poem. One of the first things I did when I got out of prison, of course, was get onto Facebook because it had come out while I was locked up.
Oh, that's interesting. So what was it like? Like not knowing what social media was, I guess, and that window. I mean, it must have been a shock.
Total culture shock.
Yeah.
But this is something that has recurred over the years. Facebook keeps telling me I should be friends with my ex-wife. Extend handshake and chivalrous salute as if we might hang out somewhere between servers and play gin rummy, digital checkers. As if not enemies isn't enough. We have to like each other and our posts. Her face appears sadly smiling on my screen like a phantom, like any of 100,000 memories, ambiguous. Add friend. The social network strong arms me, demanding I send a new request, as though she wouldn't request in turn 20 years of her life back, and I wouldn't find it too disturbing to read about a relationship status, thumb through pictures of her travels to beaches, zoos, concerts, cathedrals, with whomever might prove martyr enough for love. I'm much too busy regretting, also trying to forget and dancing in a dark and empty room while wondering how I should pitch Facebook on an add not enemy button for those we'd rather not know except we do.
That was Facebook Keeps Telling Me, another poem that was originally in Rattle and is now in Escape Envy. I think I saw you say at some point one of the most interesting things, talking about what the purpose of poetry is, and I think you said that poetry is helping strangers understand each other. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like why do you think that is the purpose of poetry?
Because that's what I look for in poetry. That's what I consider good poetry. I call it a sense of connection to the strange. I want to be able to experience what you're experiencing by reading a poem. And I want you to be able to experience the weird stuff that's going on in my life. I mean, I don't want you to have to go to prison, you, Timothy Green, but I would like you, Timothy Green, to be able to understand what happens there, aside from what you see in the movies. The day-to-day life, going in front of the institutional magistrate or joking with people about deadly serious stuff. I want you to be able to understand that as I in turn try to understand, whatever your life has to offer. I think it helps us grow as human beings to try to understand each other.
Yeah, I love that and completely agree. I just that's one of those descriptions that just stood out and always has. Do you want to close out with a last poem?
Sure. This is the closing poem in the book. I write a lot of dream poems too when I have them. The dream turned religious right before I woke. All I remember, though earlier it found an action plot. The what I've lost as surely as the why. It shifted into prayer. Not mine, not my beliefs, but some. I wasn't offended, bothered, angry, but spotted with easiness, as though I wore heating pads over aches and wounds, as though all gathered in this group and I were prisoners to the same Grendel-hearted warden. Our deaths would follow or maybe escape, should the dream not break when it did, leaving me untroubled as a gray squirrel at rest, warmed on its branch by the sun.
Excellent. That was The Dream Turned Religious Right Before I Woke. Ace Boggess, thanks so much for being a guest today. A pleasure. I mean, these are just wonderful poems that you share, and the way you approach life is just so interesting and I don't know, meaningful. I really appreciate sharing all this with us today.
Well, thanks, Tim. It's been a total joy to be here. And it's nice to finally meet you after 20 years.
Yeah, it really is. I hope we get to meet again soon.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Take care. Good night. And once again, that was Ace Boggess. His newest book is Escape Envy, which I will put on the screen right here. Escape Envy is out from Brick Road Press, and you can find that at brickroadpoetrypress.com. And you can also find Ace Boggess's website. It's one of those Wix sites, so it ends up being, you write his name twice. It is, where is it? It is, hang on, I think it's Ace Boggess. Ace Boggess. aceboggess.wixsite. That's W-I-X site, site.com/Ace Boggess. And Ace Boggess is right there. So, pick up these books by Ace. They're just wonderful books of poetry. And really interesting person. Great talking to him. Now we're going to move on to our open lines for tonight. And as always, I will put up the numbers on screen, a little splash screen here. Here we go. So email your poems first to openmic@rattle.com. That's openmic@rattle.com. Email whatever you'd like to share there first, right now, so it gets to me in time. Then call in over Skype or over the phone. Over Skype, send me a message at Rattle Poetry, all one word. Over the phone, it's 818-850-7727. That's 818-850-7727. Just let it ring a few times, then hang up, and I will call you back when the time is right. And over Skype, just send me a chat message and say hi, and I'll say hi back, and then I'll call you when it's your turn. That's how we run the open mic here. And I'm going to take a quick break and stretch, and I will be right back while you do that and I do that. So see you in a minute. And I'm back. Thanks for your patience as I stand up and refill my drink and all that stuff to make sure we're ready for the open lines. Now, the prompt for this week was, I'll put it on screen. The prompt for this week was to write a poem that explores a common argument you have with yourself or somebody else. And my poem here, maybe I should explain first what Hans Island, maybe everybody knows this. I'm not sure how common knowledge this is, but there's a little island off the coast of between Greenland and Canada, and it's disputed. The line that's supposed to divide the two countries is right through the island. So they're fighting over it, the Canadians and the Danes. And every once in a while, they'll go up and change the flag and leave a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of schnapps. And change the flag with a little note saying, "Welcome to Canada" or whatever. And that is what the little epigram is for in this poem. You kind of have to know what I'm talking about to understand that. And then also, it was hard to think of an argument that we have frequently. But one thing is, every married couple, I think, argues about the thermostat. And so when the air conditioner or the furnace turn on, I kind of feel like it's the sound of money burning. And I'm one of those people, which is obnoxious. And then Megan is not one of those people. and who would like to be comfortable. And so that is one of our arguments that we have all the time. And this was my little poem about it right here. This is an argument in another language for Hans Island. The thermostat hangs on the wall in the hall like a disputed island in an icy strait, where soldiers hike from their frigid ships over the bare rock to trade their flags and bottles of whiskey or schnapps. Welcome to Canada, you say, each word pressed deep into the rubber button, a laundry basket balanced on your hip. Willkommen till den danske O, I reply, passing by after walking the dog. That is my little poem, Argument in Another Language. And Megan's poem, I wonder what she says we argue about. Let's see. Or maybe it's an argument with herself. We'll find out. This is Smoke, Megan's poem this week. Smoke. When the waiter sneers, or the playground mom scolds, or the woman in line behind me says, look at the cashier. She has blue hair. Ridiculous. Can you imagine? Part of me knows it would be fair, maybe even righteous, to take that toxic flame into my palms, blow on it, hand it back as a wildfire. Let them be forced to see what a spark can do. But then I remember there would still be fire. Truth, yes, but fire too. So I tell the woman in line, actually I think it looks nice, and her glare is hot, but my smile is water, and I keep smiling at her, like she's my newborn baby, because once she was someone's newborn baby. And when I see her again, out in the parking lot, a summer rain is falling, and even though she pulls her coat up, she is drenched, and so am I. A great poem by Megan, as always. That is Smoke from Megan. And now let's see what you have. And I should let you know, of course, that when you call in, make sure you turn off your stream. So I'm going to call you up when it's your turn, and then you have to turn off what you're listening to listen to this, because there's a delay. Have your poem ready to read yourself, because you can't read it off the screen, and just X out of this stream, because otherwise it will be confusing. And let's call up Julian Matthews first. Hey, Julian, how you doing today?
Hi.
How are
Good.
things? How are things there? Are they getting any better from last week or 2 weeks ago when you were talking about how bad it was?
No, we had the highest death rate per day yesterday.
Oh man, I'm really sorry to hear that. I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully it'll end soon and sort of calm down. What did you want to share with us today?
So it's called COVID crime. Poets respond to the lockdowns that happened, but it was not effective at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go ahead whenever you're ready. I have it up on screen now.
COVID crime. The playground I used to take my children as kids is now a crime scene. Yellow tape, funeral. The field is empty, grass overgrown, bins overflowing. There are no kids giggling on swings, slides, or chasing each other on bicycles. No parents cheering those wobbling on new rollerblades. No gurgling babies and young mothers. No shouts to pass the ball near goalposts. No gossipy grannies in faded housecoats. No retired men with holes in old t-shirts, chattering about the markets. No dogs being walked, barking. No happy sounds. No laughter. Just the trees in a circle like silent witnesses. The leaves whispering in hushed tone. Two birds twittering on a phone line in the distance. And somewhere, buried beneath these haloed grounds, the children's hamsters, whose names I forget.
Oh, that's a beautiful poem. I love that ending too. Really powerful stuff. Thanks for sharing that, Julian. I do hope things, turn, and everywhere has had a peak and then it goes down. So hopefully that peak is soon and things will get a little better.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. Have a good night.
I hope so too.
Or a good rest of your day, I guess, out there. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. It was Julian Matthews with a COVID crime. And somehow it got very dark in here. It wasn't dark before. Let's fix that. A little better. Okay. Let us go next. Let's see, whose turn is it next? We have an 808 number calling. I'll call 808 back in a minute. I don't want to answer and surprise whoever that is. Let's see. I think Nivedita is here. Let's call up Nivedita and see how she's doing this morning for her. Hey,
Hello?
Nivedita. Yeah, how you doing today?
Hey Tim, I'm doing great, thank you. Sorry, 1 second. Let me just turn on another light here.
No problem.
No, not working. This should be better, I hope. I'm sorry, but it's raining here and I keep losing power and it keeps coming back on. So
Oh, really?
it's a bit iffy here since morning.
Oh, sorry to hear that. So it's a big.
No worries at all.
Yeah. Well, what did you want to share with us this morning? I think I have the Poet Respondent poem up first, if you want to do that.
Oh, okay. So this is basically about, I know, a random news story as usual. So it's basically this, I forgot the name of the ice cream parlor, but it's an ice cream parlor that's come up with a mac and cheese ice cream by teaming up with Kraft Foods. So it's like mac and cheese comfort food, ice cream comfort food. So like sort of best of both worlds, basically.
Oh, interesting. Van
And
Leeuwen
I
ice
think
cream.
it sells for about $12 a cup or something of that sort. So
Is this mac and cheese flavored ice cream?
exactly, that's exactly what it is.
Well,
Mac and cheese flavored ice cream.
I don't know if I would want to try that or not. I think
And it's apparently been sold out, like for quite a while. It's still sold out on their website. So people seem to be wanting it and people seem to be hopefully enjoying it. I don't know. Seems a weird combination to me, but then again.
yeah, I think that is a strange combination. But let's hear the poem that you wrote about it.
The two best comfort foods is one. A smart ice cream man once said, the ice cream world's stuck behind while the world's moved ahead. So he teamed up with Kraft and came up with an idea he thought was daft, which was a mac and cheese ice cream spread. Wishing to succeed, unturned he left no stone, and on Instagram posted one photo alone. That's all he needed, defeat conceded, and now he sells mac and cheese in a cone.
That's great. Perfect use
So
of the
that's-
limerick
yeah.
for a funny poem.
That's basically the first one.
Thanks. And then what was the other one?
So the other one was basically you wanted a poem about an argument that people usually have, and seeing as this is India and you know how gender inequality still exists and it's quite rampant here in India, in fact. So this is basically a poem like that's sort of saying I wish I was a boy, but just comparing how difficult it is for women and men here, especially women. I mean, like how the sort of troubles women face, and that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
And seeing as I'm from India, and that's something that's so very much more common here compared to other places. Not that it doesn't exist elsewhere, but it's just so much more obvious here. So I thought I would write about that.
Yeah. Well, let's hear it. It was, I wish I was a boy. Go ahead whenever you're ready with that.
I wish I was a boy. You have no cause to complain of boredom and possess the ability to do what you want. You enjoy all of life's freedom and can go late at night for a nice long jaunt. You can sleep when and any time you feel like and enjoy an unrestricted lifestyle. When annoyed, you can tell people to take a hike, and yet everyone still greets you with a smile. You have the first say in everything and are the recipient of special treatment by society. You can do no wrong and are always the best offspring. You are a gift from the Almighty. In this gender-neutral world, inequality still exists. The flag flies on high, unfurled, leaving me in knots and twists. I'm hoping and praying the day will come when such things cease and all are respected as one. Till then, to burdens and sorrow, a woman will succumb, and daughters will never be, no matter what they do, better than a son.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that, Nivedita. Thanks for writing it and letting us know what's going on over there. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. It's lovely talking to you too.
Yeah, it always is. Have a great night or day.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great evening.
And stay dry too. I could hear the rain in the background for a second, a little bit. It sounds like it. I'm jealous. I can't help but be jealous, but I'll try not to be because I'm sure you don't want it. Okay.
Actually, we do. It's based on the temperature, so I'm quite happy that it is raining as it is. So.
Oh, that's good. Well, stay cool then. Take care, Nivedita.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice evening.
This is Nivedita Karthik, and let's go up next to. Let's call Patricia Wilson. I think this is a first-time caller to find Patricia's poem, too.
Hey!
Hey, Patricia, thanks so much for joining me.
No.
You get you on the screen. So the first-time caller, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Hawaii.
Ah, great. So we're really traveling around the world tonight. What do you have for us that you wanted to share?
Well, there's the weekly news story. To read the Moon Wobble poem that I had sent in.
Excellent. Yeah, go ahead. I have it up here whenever you are ready. And let's talk about the Moon Wobble. So what is it? Do you want to explain what that story was about?
Yeah, it was in Science in I think some news company affiliated or NBC itself, and it said that the moon normally wobbles. That's the way it goes around the, that's the way it orbits. So, but it causes the tides to happen.
Mm-hmm.
However, in the next decade, the moon wobble will cause extra flooding because of the climate change. And that was the news. But in the 2030s, we're going to see more flooding because of that. Mm-hmm. And that triggered an experience I had in Waikiki the last time I was at this particular hotel on the beach there. And that's...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let's go ahead and hear this. This is Moon Wobble. Go ahead whenever you're ready. I'll put it on screen for everybody at home.
Okay. Moon Wobble. Last time I was drinking, eating, dancing with friends at Moana Surfrider Hotel in the Waikiki evening. The sea was eager to climb the stairs that normally lead to the beach, and did so with unusual aplomb. Workers bailing water away, much to our collective chagrin. It didn't occur to me then that in the 2030s, a moon dance might enhance this inundation, multiply its occurrence by 10 times, or that the lovely ambiance of the outside bar and grill might be closed one night due to saltwater flood. The question is, how to move an entire hotel inland so that people like me can watch the lonely sunset at the brink of horizon out over the largest ocean in the world, and wonder how, in our hands, such beauty should become so dangerous, even before the universe cuts in. I am sure all kinds of engineers are working on this, and I hope there will be a solution that's good for everybody. Because I just can't think of who would want to make the moon stop dancing, even if they could.
Another great poem, a great ending there too. I love that line about the, such beauty can become so dangerous. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. First time calling. I'm glad. I hope you call in again and share another poem.
I hope so too.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, that was Patricia Wilson with Moon Wobble. And let's see. Let us go to. I'm going to read. Let's see. Let's call up Danny Mask. Danny hasn't been on in a good while. Danny Mask has an alligator poem or a picture of an alligator. Let's see what this is. Hey, Danny, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man.
Yeah, it's always good. It's always good to hear from you. It's been a while since we have. I know you got that new place down by the water.
Yeah, I've been busy. Did you see that new picture of the alligator I sent?
I do. Yeah. Do you want me to? I can play that. It's a video. Let me go back and find it.
Yeah, play the video. I mean, that's a very large alligator.
Let me see, alligator. Here. So here, this is shared and drive, and it comes up fine. So let's share this. This is I don't know if there's sound or not. Oh my gosh, let's look at this. So we're gonna keep you on. Maybe I'll tell you when I play it, and you can narrate and explain what's going on here. Okay. So I have it on the screen now. Go ahead and tell everybody what we're seeing.
Well, his name is LB, right? And he is well known in the area, and so he's a very, very large alligator. And on the way to Fort Anderson, there's like a little lake, Lake Orton, and so we just drove up. And as soon as we drove up, he felt the vibration, and he just came right up to the shoreline. I mean, wow. Unbelievable. It scared the heck out of Becca.
I bet, yeah. I spent a summer in Miami once. And there are all these great, like I wanted to hike or go for jogs and stuff. And there are all these great trails by the place where concrete paths you could jog on, but they came right next to the water. And I was just too terrified to do that. I mean, probably they wouldn't, mess with the large human. They would always be taking dogs, like little people walking their chihuahuas and stuff. But I don't know. Growing up in the North, gators are not something that I'm used to worry about.
No. Well, we're there's a lot of pictures on Nextdoor for snakes, so we have a lot of snakes.
Yeah, that's something else.
So I think it's because we live so close to Brunswick River. There's just so many animals, which I like. You just have to be a little careful. That's all.
Yeah, I bet. So, what poem did you want to share, though?
Well, this is a very quick poem that I did because Ace was talking about editing, and I do very little editing on my poems lately. And so what I do is I write them in clips, like in thirds, and then I switch them around to see what sounds better. That's as much editing as I do. So this is about eating a full bag of potato chips and trying to find the perfect potato chip. You know how you look through the bag for the perfect potato chip?
Yeah.
Until you get to the bottom of the bag and then you have to eat the crumbs.
Yeah, I like the one that they fold over. That's the best potato chip, I think. Don't feed them to the gators, though.
No. They were using marshmallows to pull an alligator out of the pond
the
other day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were attracted. Yeah, so alligators like marshmallows.
Interesting. Well, calories, I guess. Yeah, wow. Well, let's hear this potato chip poem.
Here we go. Wrapped in a blanket of binge-watched movies, I felt like I was living in some kind of utopia. My neck stretched, mouth gaped, slick with saliva, reminding me that my body is a hungry hovel where any illusion can be poorly constructed. I make a pincher out of my hand that's more practical than pretty, and I reach without looking for that perfectly formed potato chip.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that.
You bet, buddy. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, same here. I hope you can call in again soon.
I will, buddy. See ya. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Okay, that was Danny Mask with the potato chip poem. What was it actually called? It was just called Potato Chip Poem. Thanks for sharing that, Danny. Let's call up next. I'm going to read Carlton Johnson's poem. This was for the prompt, Flat or Not, by Carlton Johnson. Let me read this. Here we go. Flat or not? I don't see just the edge. I see beyond your planted perceptions. My own tongue has a word for the object you refuse to see. Some call it a curve or horizon. There's a space beyond where ships, setting sail, never fail to dip low. Sails progressively vanish, and then return having not seen any dragons or griffins or other mythological beasties. There is awe of the undiscovered countries lying just over the edge of the map. What is beyond? Why can't you see it? Folding around you a breath of fresh air, quiet, without sound, and yet there in the middle of it, all when you close your eyes, and can hear that plaintive whoosh, whooshing of your heart yearning, starting and briefly stopping, circling again and again the orbit of your varied existence. You see the earth as an upturned pie plate, floating a disk among the spherical lights. My mind boggles at your logic. I, however, see the roundness of all things, my eyes, my heart, my belly, the circle equidistant from its center, and yet there is that third dimension that transforms the plate into a ball. It is a wonder how it all came to be, me here and you over there studying your flat map of the world. Come on over to this side of the argument. I promise to bring some pie. Thanks for sharing that. That was Carlton Johnson's Flat or Not. Excellent poem. I'm not sure how literal that is, or if that's the whole thing is a metaphor. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that, Carlton. Let me see. Let's call up. We had a new caller at 808. Let's see who that is. We'll get them in the phone book. Hey, this is Tim with Rattle. You are live on the air. Who am I talking to?
Oh, no, this is Patrice again.
Patrice, you called too. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
I will just hang up, but Skype worked great, so we'll do Skype next time. Talk to you soon.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
Thanks.
That was Patrice. I should just put that in the phone book anyway. Patrice Wilson. 1 second. So we know who it is next time. If we get a phone call. Okay. Now, instead, let us call. Let's do Grace Farron. Uh-oh. It looks like, Grace, I didn't get your poem. The email is empty, but let's see.
Hello.
Hey, Grace. So you emailed me a poem, but there was no poem attached or like in it.
Oh no. I can resend that right now.
Yeah, why don't you resend it, and I'll just call you back in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, bye. See you in a little bit. Okay, let's try this again. Let's call instead. Let us go to Angela Gardner. Hey, Angela, how you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Let me.
Yeah, I was just listening. Hold on, let me get you off there.
Okay.
All right, I'm not on video, right?
No, you're not. You were for a second, but you were like off the screen while you were, so that's okay.
Sorry. Oh, I know. I was like, I pressed the wrong button, but then I didn't want to hang up on you. So
Yeah, it's okay. So, what did you want to share with us tonight?
I wrote this pretty quick. I have this theme going for the poem, and I'm like, oh, this is your prompt. Kind of prompted me to kind of write this. So, along with my theme, so it's about a book, like a book on the shelf that I want to read, and I always go past and try to read it, but I just, it's kind of like you always have all those books on the shelves that you really love that you haven't finished, but it's just like you don't have time, or you'll see. But yeah, so it's
I think we can all relate to that. so let's hear it, dear book.
And then, do you have time for me to read my Poet's Respond poem? If not, that's okay too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we're not in a big rush. Did you email it to me, or should I look it up on?
Yeah, if you can look it up.
Yeah, I'll just grab it. But let's do dear book first. Okay.
Dear book, you are sitting there on the bookshelf. My grocery receipt is lodged halfway through your pages. I have tried to read about your questionable characters. There is one who has been distressing me. He's uninteresting with his behaviors of dully talking to a woman who loathes him. The grime that settled on your cover has left me indifferent. I would have to clean, and I have a dust allergy. I don't have time to take the 24-hour round pill. My plan is to walk past you every day until you call my name. But I know you won't, so I will give you away.
Excellent poem. And I hope you give it to someone who enjoys it. I wouldn't mind. Extra books anytime.
Yeah, I have plenty. I mean, it's just so many books in my life. I can't get to them all of them. And then, there's ones I want to read, but it just, I get halfway through and then I just have put it down and yeah.
Yeah, we're having trouble here because we usually have this literary festival that we do in the fall, and we couldn't do it because of COVID. And I used to always give extra books after I'd read them. I'd give them away to people as like we had this system where we'd have, I think for like $20 or something, you buy a tote bag from the festival, and then you can take as many books of mine as you can fit in the tote bag. And so we haven't had that in 2 years now, and my bookshelves are a little they're in trouble.
Hey, I'll take your books. We can do a book exchange.
Yeah, sure. So what was I have the Poet Respond poem up. What was it that you were writing about this week?
Yeah, I wish I wrote it a little better, but I'll read it anyway. But
actually, I really like this poem a lot, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Well, it's about that. Over in I forget. I think it was China. Because I don't have the article in front of me now. But it's basically, so this guy. There was actually a movie about it that I would love to look up and see. I think it was Lost in Love, and their child got abducted too, because in China they are only allowed to have like one child and the son. So there's a lot of people who want sons who might not be able to have them. So they abducted their son. Someone abducted their son at 2, and he went across the country on a motorcycle looking for his son. I guess he had a flag on his motorcycle, and he would go through, so many motorcycles, but they finally found the son, and they were reunited. And I just,
oh wow,
me having kids and a son, I can't imagine, going through all those years not being able to be with my son and not knowing where he is. And I think we all have as parents, and he's a teenager and I still do it today. If they go around the corner in the grocery store, the store, and you can't see them, and have a little anxiety about it. So it's but to have it where they don't come back or you don't find them again, I just feel I'm happy for the parents, but I'm sad for all the years that they lost their child and weren't able to see them grow up. So I was just thinking how lucky I am to have, and that's what, when they found him in the article, it said, darling son. So that's what the mother said. So I was just talking about, we all have these darling sons.
Yeah, definitely can relate to that too. Go ahead and read it.
Okay. A darling son. When my son was 2, we would sit outside and watch the squirrels, who would gather nuts, climb on our fence, and annoy the dog. I would teach him how to say hello and goodbye with his tiny hands. As a young mother, I worried, will he run the street, burn his fingers on the stove? That day in the grocery aisle, I looked at the cereal shelf. He was standing next to me. I turned to ask him what he liked. A throbbing in my chest began. He was found playing in the toy section. The bubble wrap I had tightly wrapped around him since then was holding. I looked at him, a teenager who is sleeping in his bed. He still waves hello and goodbye. I, too, would hitch a ride cross-country to find him if he was stolen.
Yeah, just very touching moment. And we're so lucky, as parents these days, not to have half of them die from, cholera or whatever, or dysentery. I mean, I don't know. I just feel very fortunate to have our kids here all the time.
Yeah, and I just want to keep feeling fortunate, but it's definitely every day you have a worry. But yeah, and me, as you know, being such a news junkie, I shouldn't be reading all this stuff, but it makes me even more. My mom always said I was so carefree before I had kids.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. I was kind of like Ace, where I just like enjoyed the absurdity of life and didn't really, I went with the flow of things. And then having kids, you can't. I remember the thought, you can't die. They're used to the thought that you would just die eventually and it's all meaningless was comforting in a weird way to me. But then once you have kids, you're like, oh, that's no longer a comfort. That's something else to worry about.
I know.
So I need a new coping strategy.
I do too, but poetry has been my coping, so that's good.
Excellent.
So,
Well, I'm so glad it has been. Angela, always great to talk to you.
great to talk to you. Have a great night.
Yep,
Thank
you too. Bye.
Bye.
It's Angela Gartner with 2 poems. A Darling Son was the most recent. And let's see. And yeah, okay, here's Grace's other poem, or poem that she meant to send before. Let's call it Grace Again. Hey, Grace, we are back. Thanks so much for getting that poem to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what did you have that you wanted to share? What was this inspired by, or anything you want to say about it?
Sure. So this poem is about when, like, you just keep doing that thing that you always do that's just like so self-destructive.
So
And
this is
like,
an argument with yourself, I'm assuming.
yeah, I had already written it. It wasn't inspired by the prompt, but I was like, this kind of fits, I think, with the prompt this week. And yeah, so it's just kind of about like that battle with yourself of just like, oh my God, can I stop doing this, please?
Okay, well, let's hear it whenever you're ready.
Okay, it's called An Easy Mistake to Make. I lose myself sometimes. Mondays slip into Fridays, slip into Mondays so fast. A lifetime goes by in the breath of tomorrow. I don't know what to say to make it stop. I don't know how to show up on my doorstep ready to be the person I was never taught to be. I don't know how to make space for all the space I've rejected, squeezed and cinched and barricaded down into nothing. If my space takes up less space, maybe it won't be so hard to find someone to hold it. But who would want this twisted tribute to death? A bird crushed against the sudden rush of a window. It's not selfish to want to see the sun, but I ask myself when enough is too much. How can I justify the skeletons lining my window pane? You see, they don't understand the inside meets outside phenomenon of clear glass facing east, of warm, gooey mornings with butterscotch dripping over clean sheets, of playing solar system in the orbit of good books and succulents and golden hour glow. They don't understand, and they run headfirst into obstacles they never could have anticipated needing to see. I hit my head against the glass sometimes too. It seems so far away. Then suddenly it rushes up, leaps out, and smacks you and leaves you aching, rubbing the sore spot and wondering how you ran into that thing you've always known was there. That thing that should be so easy to avoid. But in your rush and fluster, you forgot to protect yourself, and bang. It's an easy mistake to make.
Great poem. Thanks so much for expressing and sharing that. Definitely something we can all relate to. I know I have my things like that I wish I wouldn't do. So thanks so much for thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Again, that was Grace Farron with An Easy Mistake to Make. Let's see, who is next? We have a bunch of people still. Let's call up... actually, let me read... let's see. Oh, Vicky says she has a new computer. I'm going to try Vicky in a little bit after we do one more. But let me read Ted Guevara's poem because he sent this. And this was his prompt poem. and he asked if I would read it, and then we'll call up Vicky next, and then we'll do Richard Westheimer. I'm not sure who else. I'll look through who else is on the list. We have a prompt poem from Carlton Johnson, too. So we'll do that, but let's do this from Ted Guevara. Ted called in last week, and this week asked me to read this. Hang on, let me get it sized right. Okay. This is Living Day, and I believe this is a prompt poem. Let me double check. Or did he send two? This is revised. Oh, it's an idiom poem too. Oh, that's the idiom poem. Yeah, I'm talking to myself. Don't worry about it. Okay, so this is the Argue to Myself poem. And here we go from Ted Guevara, Living Day. Living Day. My friend has not shared his status. In fact, he's proud of it. He just posted a meme of a girl making biscuits, barefooted and responsible. The walls are covered with grocer bags, an embroidered throw. Yet she is mindful. She has sibling mouths to feed. In 1938. Why my friend yelps from this photo, I don't know. It's not his kin or even his hilly state. And the girl looked so canny as if she had no time, if she could have, to surf on Facebook. Her being is spread thin to the many some 80 years later. It rests on my friend's wrist. My argument to myself is, why blame the girl for her audacity to pose in a rundown kitchen, which was probably the big room of her family stay? She might not have had a mother, or a ridiculously fall from grace father, leaving 5 kids for their oldest daughter to feed. My argument is little Frankie may have been bored to chop wood and gather kindles, and Sue to feed the chickens, and one brother may have saved a neighbor from hanging because of deep bond friendship. My argument to myself is that you know how neighbors are, borrowing this, lending that. I'm just in turmoil if my non-shredding Facebook friend knows this, so he can be content on being poor, the generality of poor, and not at all on referencing the good and bad day of poor. Very interesting poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Ted. And I would love to see that picture, actually, but we'll have to not see that this time. And thanks for sharing that, Fred. Living Day, or Ted, I should say. Ted Guevara, Living Day. Let's see. Now let's do the Vicky Miko. And Vicky says she has a new computer, and we'll see if Skype works now, because before she had it popped right up. Let's see. Hey, Vicky, can you hear me? There you are.
Hi.
This is awesome. So you finally.
Oh, wait a sec. I have to turn this off.
Okay, yeah. Turn the background off. But oops, hang on a second. I'm messing it up too. But we. Oh yeah, that setting changed. Let me change a setting. They have the resizing. Here we go. If I go to scale filtering, no, it's already on area. Anyway, Vicky, I'm so glad we could join you by Skype after all this time. So it was the computer, not the internet connection,
good.
Huh?
Well, I think it's probably the connection. I have only one bar, so I don't know. It might cut out. I apologize.
No problem. So what did you want to share today?
Now you're breaking up.
Uh-oh. Well, maybe I guess it was the connection, maybe. But what did you want to share today?
Well, I did kind of a bizarre poem for Poets Respond.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tragic story, but it's a very strange story. A man was emerging from a manhole,
mm-hmm.
and it wasn't a worker, it was just somebody in a manhole, and somebody drove by and the plate flew up and it killed him.
Oh, wow. In Panorama City, too. I used to be in Panorama City all the time, yeah.
Wow. So my poem, I matched Parthenia Street with mythology, which is kind of strange. So here goes.
Okay.
The epigram in Greek mythology, Parthenia is a river nymph, and her name is derived from the word Parthenos, meaning virgin. So here's my poem. His ascension to Parthenia. A skylight lost in the crabgrass, his last descent. He lived there for a short time in the subterranean chamber of Parthenia's belly. Her luring smell of musket coursed along her feeder line, where she gave him respite from his broken roots. His agony clung slit and haggard inside her acid walls, where her river of empty bottles chimed against the buckling chain links. Soothed by the rhythms of shallow thunder, she licked his stinging tendrils for the last time. Rising out of the drop shaft, his face warmed to the sunstream. Parthenia anointed his head, a verdigris ending. And then I have pictures to go, so it's kind of a Haga.
Oh, yeah, and those are beautiful pictures of a manhole. So when you include these pictures, they're pictures that you took, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just been great to be able to share and look at these haiku that you do throughout
thanks.
the last year. Yeah, I just love what you do with poems and how you bring in. Yeah. I'm so glad we could see you and actually hear you read your poems. This is great.
Well, it's great too. The delay is still kind of goofed up, but hopefully I can come back then. Everybody's poems are wonderful too. So thanks everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. It's always great to see you now.
You too. Bye-bye.
It's Vicky Miko with what was that called? That was his ascension to Parthenia. A Poet's Respond poem. Let us go next to Richard Westheimer. Then I have some. Oh, let's hear. Here's Richard. Hey
Tim.
Richard, how you doing today?
Good. What a great interview. My goodness.
Yeah. Ace is really cool. I had no idea. I never met him before. Oops,
I was at a reading. This is the second time in 3 weeks that I had just been at a reading with your Rattlecast poet.
Oh, really? So Ace,
last week,
Ace was at a reading?
He was at a reading for Sheila Nagig.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then those of us who were in the issue read in the open mic. Mm-hmm. He was featured. And then 2 weeks before that, Tina Parker, who I had been at a reading with at a Appalachian local to this region here. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's really cool. And Ace has this new book. I don't know how old this book is. When did it come out? But it's good. It's great that he's finding places to read because it's tough these days having a new book out in the COVID era.
Yeah, it just I was struck. There was sort of the awkward question about what you do for a living, and somebody who's so prolific and such a good poet should be able to thrive on his poetry. Mm-hmm. But it's just not how this art works.
Yeah, that's not how the world works, unfortunately. Maybe someday, we'll figure out a way to make it happen. I mean, I'd love for, advances on books of poetry and enough people buying them. Maybe someday we'll figure out.
Well, that's the Rattle mission, I guess.
It is. We keep trying. So what did you want to share today?
So I had, I actually had 2 Poets Respond poems this week because there was just so much news that was like top of mind and stirred me. But I'm going to read No Flood's Going to Get Us High on This Hill.
Okay. And I have here, is this about the Germany floods?
Yeah, it's sort of about Germany. And I've been reading, heard an interview with Jory Graham, who wrote Runaway, and I decided I'm going to try to read some of her poems, and I could not connect at all.
Yeah, I love the early, or the mid, I guess you could say, the Dream of the Unified Field, and those poems in the middle of that book, some really great ones. Earlier or later, gets too language-ish, I think, but just for me personally. But try the middle books. Try what is it called? Dream of the Unified Field is the collected that she did in the late 90s, and the ones that are in the middle, her books 3 through 5, I love. So check those out, maybe.
Okay, I will. She's sort of on a mission now to highlight climate disaster, and it almost seems like she's on a mission. But anyway, I've been sort of obsessed with saying, how can I embody climate disaster poems. So
interesting.
You might see a few of those.
Yeah. Okay,
So
we'll go ahead with this. Yeah.
No flood's going to get us high on this hill. Here, and don't want to make you jealous, but this first line will.
Okay.
Here, it's been raining hammers and nails. The kids have dragged their squeals and taunts inside. The drenched cat scratches at the back door, screen door, and zinnias are tipping over in their pots. Over there, though, it's raining coffins and cleats, arms and legs and the flesh of rats, and dogs and wheels and fruit carts and baby buggies are streaming down streets into sinkholes that swallow towns, submerge the screams of neighbors, all brought down in flashing, flooding slogs of roofs and window sashes, Volkswagens, ancient oaks and photo albums, wire-haired dachshunds, and drowned canaries in their cages. Please shriek inside your heart. Keep it to yourself, they say, because it's not like we earthlings are all in a runaway, tricked-out climate truck on a one-lane blacktop. The brakes most likely would work if the driver ever decided to use them, but what the hell, no flood's going to get us high on this hill. Anyway, those are foreigners washing away, folks who should know better to live in Westphalia, Flagstaff, NYC, and why would anyone stay in Oaxaca in June? Rain's going to rain and flood's going to flood, and some people and their canaries are just going to get swept away, and brakes on trucks are for suckers, right?
Another great ending to a poem. Thanks for sharing that, Richard. There's no flood's going to get us high on this hill. Thanks for sharing that, Richard. And yeah, a bunch of poems today have sort of swelled into a really great last stanza or last few lines, and that was one of them. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks. Bye, Tim.
Bye. So Richard Westheimer with No Flood's Going to Get Us High on This Hill. Let's see. Is there anybody else? There are a few people who emailed me prompt poems. Let's see. But haven't called in. So I'm going to put up the numbers one more time. I'll put them up here this way. They're on the screen if you would like to call in right now. Email the poem to openmic@rattle.com. Send me well, you already have if you're one of the people I'm talking to. But call me up, 818-850-7727. Just let it ring a couple times, then hang up. I will call you back. Or send me a chat message over Skype to Rattle Poetry, all one word, and I'll call you back. Then we'll get connected. But if I don't hear back, I'll just read these two that are from this week. And that'll probably be a good way to close out the show. Let's see. So I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. So, 'cause it's always nice to have the people read their own poems themselves. Okay. Oh, okay. Please disregard this email. Okay, so maybe Kimberly changed her mind and didn't want to share this. Susan Talley. Oh, okay. So that maybe actually is the show for today. I was looking at two emails that are sort of quasi unrelated. Yeah. Okay. So that is going to be the show for today. Let's do the quick haiku to end out the show with. And I pick a news story that isn't well known. I just look through. I read a lot of science publications, so I like to look at that directly. But oh wait, here, hang on. Somebody is. Let's see. Oh, there's an unknown caller. Oh, I think I know who that is. So this is what it is. Let me do this first. Then Carlton Johnson has another poem. That's what it was, and that's Carlton Johnson. And this is A Trace, and this is from. Let me look up this article too. The second article from UPI. Niveditas was from UPI too. And this is the article. Possible Michelangelo foot fingerprint found on statue. Oh, that's interesting. So what may be Michelangelo's thumbprint has been found on a small wax statue that he created 500 years ago. Museum experts at London's Victoria and Albert Museum found the mark pressed onto the dark red figurine, which was a sketch from a larger, unfinished marble sculpture. Titled A Slave, the figurine depicting a naked figure with an arm across its face was part of the Renaissance masters' preparations for Pope Julius II's elaborate tomb in Rome. So you can find this article at UPI, possible Michelangelo fingerprint found on statue. But here was Carlton Johnson's short poem for This is a Trace. A trace. Unknown on any FBI or Interpol database, the fingerprint you left in wax may be the only evidence that you actually transcended the plane of angels and made a great impression here on Earth. Excellent short poem. That was A Trace by Carlton Johnson. And thanks for sharing that, Carlton, and thanks for the nudge, the little phone call. I forgot you'd sent two. Okay, and now we will do this little haiku for today. And like as I was saying, the haiku this week, I did a popular science story for the first time in maybe the entire time of the Critique of the Week. I just thought this was an interesting story, and this was the same thing that Patrice was writing about. This is the moon wobble, climate change seen as driving coastal flooding in the 2030s. And Patrice already explained this a little bit. Moon wobble. And so the moon has a little wobble, kind of like the Earth has a wobble. And the wobble affects the amount of gravity. It's actually because the moon isn't uniformly dense. Different parts of the moon are more dense and have more gravitational pull than other parts of the moon. And so as the moon wobbles, the magnetic or the gravitational field gets stronger and weaker. And so the tides get larger and smaller. It's an 18.6 year cycle. And there you go. The moon's gravitational pull. And anyway, so right now we are actually at the low point in the cycle. It goes up every 9 years is a low point, and then 9 years later is a high point, and it's an 18.6 year cycle. So the flooding that we have right now seems smaller than it really is. And then around 2030, the moon's pull will get a little stronger, the tides will get a little bigger, and then the coastal flooding that we see at high tide will be even more significant than it is at the moment. And this is my quick haiku, or saiku. He tells it again, walking home from the bar, wobbly moon. He tells it again, walking home from the bar, wobbly moon. And that is the saiku for this evening. I walk the dog late at night and see some people walking home from the bar, which was what inspired that wobbly moon poem. And that is your saiku for the day, and that is going to be the end of the Rattlecast for today. Now, next week's prompt is going to be right here. When the sun goes down at the county fair. That is next week's prompt, when the sun goes down at the county fair. So write your poems about that and enjoy. Now, next week's guest is going to be Jack Riddle. Jack's just a marvelous teacher. He's had, I think I read in his bio that he's had 85 of his students have become published poets at his work at Hope College. His newest book is St. Peter and the Goldfinch, which I haven't read yet. He's sending that along. But I have Practicing to Walk Like a Heron. It's one of my favorite books. It's his new and selected, I think, from about 2013. And I just love that book. He's a kind of a wise sage, kind of quiet type poet. And really looking forward to talking to him about poetry. That is Sunday, July 25th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, the usual time. And then we will talk to Jack Riddle. We'll have Poets Respond live at the beginning. We'll have open lines at the end, like always, with your prompt poem, When the Sun Goes Down at the County Fair. Thanks again, everybody, for joining me. And do please remember to click the like button, especially if you're on YouTube, because of that false start thing we had where we cut off the first few minutes. I didn't get my little spiel out there. So make sure you do click the like button and share and all that good stuff. No matter where you're watching this right now, that really helps things spread around. It actually does. So please help us out in that way. And I'll see you next week with Jack Riddle on Rattlecast number 103. Have a good night.